Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our May 2026 Learning Lunch. My name is Tracy Novick, and I'm a field director with MASC. We are really glad today to have with us those who can best answer your questions about the MSBA building process, and I know that they welcome your questions during this presentation. We have with us today Jennifer Gonzalez, who's the Deputy Executive Director of MSBA, as well as Matt Donovan, who's the Director of Administration and Operations. And I am just introducing them, and then I'm letting them take it away. So welcome, and thank you all for being with us.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you for having us. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Jennifer Gonzalez. I've been the Deputy Executive Director for about a year. I previously held a few roles in the finance department at the authority. I'm happy to be joined by my colleague, MSBA Director of Administration and Operations, Matt Donovan, and we would like to thank MASC for inviting us to present today and for their continued partnership and collaborative efforts on behalf of all the school districts across the Commonwealth. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, the MSBA is a funding agency whose mission is to partner with Massachusetts communities to support the design and construction of educationally appropriate, flexible, sustainable, and cost-effective public school facilities. The MSBA's program is a non-entitlement competitive grant program and has a dedicated revenue stream of 1 penny of the state's 6.25% sales tax for school construction funding. I wonder if you're able to raise your hand if you've worked on an MSBA funded project before. I don't know if that functionality exists. Okay, great. Tracy has. Wonderful. Just curious how many are brand new to the process. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started with our presentation. Today, we'll discuss some of the school committee activities that are part of the MSBA's SOI process and early modules, as well as updates on our program, including statements of interest, the early modules, funding policies, Green Schools program, and the Model School program. We have a couple of points during the presentation where we'll stop for questions on the section covered, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Matt to discuss the SOI process.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Donovan. I am the Director of Administration Operations, as Tracy and Jennifer had stated. I have been with the authority since 2005, so I've been here for a bit. So for those who aren't familiar with our process, where we start is with an SOI. What's an SOI? It's a statement of interest. It's the first critical step in our program. It's where a district comes to us and identifies the deficiencies that they have in their school. You might ask, when do we open? Every year. Every January we open, usually around the second week, and we make sure that we do a broad communication to any interested parties. MASC has been a great partner with us getting our information out, and you'll probably be seeing more information from Tracy or her colleagues in the future about any of our roundtables, any of our programs, any changes in policy, any sort of project advisories or anything like that we do. MASC has always been a great resource for us. So I just want to reiterate that. So the first part opens second week in January. The superintendent is the district's eligible applicant, and all communications will go through the superintendent's office and superintendent. What we normally do then is ask for a list from the local municipality or district of who else they'd like on the emails. But when we are having the point of contact, it is the superintendent. So when they are filing a statement of interest, the school committee must vote on that application. So that's the first step where the school committee would come into play for our process. And the school committee chair would sign off on the SOI with the superintendent and the chief executive of the municipality. The MSBA has two programs to choose from. The core program is for large renovation, addition, or potential replacement projects, and the ARP or accelerated repair program is for roofs, windows, and doors, and now heat pumps. We started that program last year. One key point in the ARP program it only opens on a biennial basis with invitations issued for the equivalent of 2 years worth of projects. And districts should plan accordingly with the extra time between filing periods. At one point, due to funding, we did take the ARP program down in 2022, and then we reinstated it in 2024 with the heat pump program starting in 2025. So next slide, please, Jennifer. This is some of the historical information on our submittals and how many we've received from districts. As you can see, for 2026 that just closed April 17th, we received 34 statements of interest from 26 districts. So we're currently in our due diligence process and reviewing them with decisions to come at our December board meeting. But you can see where some of the numbers are inflated there in 25 and 24 because the accelerated repair program was in play then. And now we won't be accepting accelerated repair program projects again until January of 27. So that's where the number 34 comes in there. Next slide, please. There are 163 core projects spread through the various phases of our pipeline, as you can see here. For 2025, we received 27 statements of interest. We invited 15 of those in at our December of 2025 Board of Directors meeting. The deadline to submit for this 2026 was April 17th, as I stated. There were no accelerated repair program applications this year, so we did have a lot of questions from people on that. Even though we sent communications out, people were still asking when we're going to open. We'll be opening that again in January 27. Just to want to reiterate that. For more information on this, you can find it on our website. We do have a very robust website that we are constantly updating and putting information up there, usually like every 6 weeks after our board meetings. Our board meets every 6 weeks, and we're constantly cycling projects through our pipeline. We do post our agenda, and it's a webinar format. And if you'd like the link, everything for that is on our website as well. Next slide, please. Some of the criteria for our ARP program. Once again, that's roofs, windows, and heat pumps and doors. It's important to check the criteria because it could change. For our criteria in 2025, the requirements for roofs were that they had to be more than 20 years old, and for windows, more than 30 years old. And in October of 2025, for 2025, we received 99 statements of interest for accelerated repair, and we were able to invite 93 of the 99 in. The other 6 didn't meet some of the criteria or a district asked to withdraw their application. Next slide, please. This is about our heat pump program. Once again, it's important to check the requirements of this. So if you're applying for a heat pump, which we just started in 2025, your windows cannot be less than 30 years old. They need also replace the roof if it's more than 15 years old if you're going to apply. And buildings with steam heating systems will be ineligible for this. Next slide, Jen. So this is just a little bit about our process, how it interacts if you're applying for a core program, SOI, and how our process works. Basically, you apply. We do our due diligence. We send a team out of architects, engineers, and MSBA staff to take a look at what's been identified in the statement of interest. And from there, we start to look at other competing applications that came in, and we try to quantify who the most urgent and needy are in a given year. We do have a cap of $1.2 billion per year to appropriate to core projects. So we're cognizant of that and not overextending ourselves or overpromising when we're making our invitations. We also want to make sure that districts are ready to roll in regards to financial and with their capital plan. So we'll touch a little bit more on that later. So next slide, Jen. So here are some tips for filing. So if you are filing, it's important to figure out in advance, have conversations locally on what you want to look at and what you want to prioritize, because we do ask districts to prioritize one project that they're submitting for our core program. You want to identify which programs you want to apply for, whether it's going to be the core, which is the addition, major addition renovation or new, or the accelerator repair. You want to have those conversations beforehand, but you also want to be cognizant of that. Sometimes your project you might have filed for an ARP might consist of more than just a roof, window, boiler. The school might need more of a scope on a potential project. So that's why we ask people to check both programs and see what fits their needs. We have templates. We have all kinds of information on our website for this as well. But just looking at where the school committee will fit in, and it's going to work closely with the superintendent, closely with local officials, and making sure that, what the educational plan for these projects is going to be important when they get invited in, that the educational plan will kind of dictate what's going to happen in the project. For those that have worked with us in the past, you know how much our board looks at the educational plans and how that's going to kind of make the make the project go. So ahead of filing the SOI with the MSBA, the school committee will already have discussed potential options, whether it's going to be core or whether it's going to be accelerator repair. So then from there, before they're going to file also, they'll discuss the potential if they're going to reorganize grades or consolidate school facilities and direct the superintendent to indicate in the SOI in exploring such options as part of a potential project. We have experience with a few school committees electing to vote to proceed with including the information in the SOI, but is more often evidence that has been discussed prior to putting it into the SOI. Districts determine the local actions or approvals necessary to include the information in the SOI. So what's that mean? A lot of those decisions have to be made at a local level, whether you're going to look at consolidating schools, whether you're going to be doing redistricting, whether you're going to be doing grade configuration changes or anything along those lines. That should be coming to us already in the works at a local level. Because what we don't want to have to do is be the arbiter or the referee of some of the decisions that might have to be made. Whether you think your building is capable of housing your educational plan is also an important factor when determining which path you will take. Multiple SOIs can be submitted for each program, but a priority SOI must be identified. That's important. That's very important because there's a lot of competing interests. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made. We're asking what districts to kind of prioritize the first year we opened in 2007. I was here and we had some districts apply for 33 projects. And when we asked them how many they could actually do, they said we could do one. So from there, we started looking at budgets and what people could sustain or people could take on at a local level. And one seemed to be the number. Have we worked with communities on multiple projects at the same time? Yes, we have. But some of those are the bigger districts and that have many more schools and more capacity to take on multiple projects at the same time. So that the school committee should plan for taking votes and other votes such as Board of Selectmen or City Council early. Make sure your votes are all lined up. Make sure everyone's on board. So when you're submitting an SOI, or even if you get invited in, you're working with us, that you're looking at your calendars, you're looking at your town meetings, you're looking at your city council or your council or selectmen votes, and when you need to have the check marks and the votes into us for. Jen, next slide, please. We can go to the next one, actually. So communications and resources. Our website has so much information on there, but sometimes it could be hard to digest, but we think it's easy. But sometimes we do get a lot of questions, and I think we are an organization where we are open and happy to answer any and all questions. For those who have worked with us, um, we don't shy away from anything. We don't shy away from being fully transparent and trying to help districts out. We understand it's a collaborative effort. We understand the magnitude of some of these projects. We have currently like the 163 core projects we have going. We have another 140 odd ARP projects. So 300 projects that we have going right now, and there's not many scenarios that we haven't seen or been involved in. So um, it's always important to keep lines of communication open. And what we try to do is make sure that everyone on a local level knows what's going on with our projects, where they're at, and any status. And if there are questions, we make sure that we answer them in a thorough and transparent process. So next slide, Jen.
Thanks, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So you might want to start planning for January 2027 when our next SOI invitations open, and our school survey may be able to help you with that. The MSBA's enabling statute requires that a periodic survey be conducted to assess elementary and secondary public schools across the Commonwealth. The 2025 school survey included 308 districts, and 1,500 buildings were assessed out of a total of 1,800 schools across the state. The delta between the two numbers are the schools we didn't assess because they're in the MSBA's pipeline. As many of you know, the MSBA conducted on-site assessments last year, and the data collected will help the MSBA understand how individual districts fit within the overall spectrum of needs. The report was released in January, and there is more information available on our website. And the MSBA would like to sincerely thank all of the districts that have contributed to the survey and supported the on-site visits. Overall, schools received a building condition rating between 1 and 4, with 1 being the best. 89% of schools across the Commonwealth received a rating of 1 or 2, as shown in blue and yellow in both of these charts. They also were reviewed for general environment condition, and 98 received a rating of 1 and 2 for that, as you can see again in the blue and the yellow. A few districts across the Commonwealth are experiencing enrollment growth and overcrowding, but many have overcapacity and lower enrollment than in previous years, which brings its own challenges. The data collected includes information on sustainable building strategies such as solar, occupancy sensors, and rain and gray water retention. Although most of the schools are in good condition, 167 have low condition ratings of 3 or 4 and are likely in need of renovations or possible replacement. The building renovation timeline chart shows the relative age by square footage and highlights the need for regularly scheduled ongoing maintenance and capital planning, because you can see that there's a number of buildings that are more than 40 years old, and even the buildings that the MSBA has assisted in rebuilding or renovating, they're starting to get closer to that 20-year time frame where it might be important to start looking at something like an ARP project. Are there any questions on what we've covered so far? Okay, we'll move on to the early stages. Once a district's SOI has been invited into the program, it starts off with eligibility period. And on the next few slides, we'll focus on activities for the core program projects since the ARP have a smaller subset of these requirements. Module 1 eligibility period begins with the initial compliance certification, which, like the statement of interest and the closed school policy, need to be signed by the chair of the school committee as well as the superintendent and chief executive officer of the municipality. At least one member of the school committee must be appointed to the school building committee, and the district will seek funding authorization for the cost of the feasibility study. Determining the enrollment to be studied is a foundational element right at the beginning of eligibility. Is this school expected to have the same number of students as are currently attending, or are there other scenarios to explore, such as adding a grade? Redistricting and potential consolidation are important school committee roles, and it's important that you indicate if you want to look at incorporating other things such as pre-K into a building when submitting the SOI right up front. The SOI process is designed to be simple, and you don't need necessarily an outside consultant to help you, but it is important that the school district think about their buildings overall and how they might want to make some changes. Once a district is invited in, we can't really add additional items. So if you had a middle school that was grades 5, 6, and 7, we wouldn't be able to add grade 8 potentially. So we want to talk about what are the different options you would like to consider. Middle school, combining it with the high school, 2 different tiers for elementary. Do you want to bring them into K-5 and then move to other schools having a middle school setup? We need to flesh that out at the beginning so that we can understand how many projects we're able to invite within our annual cap. In Module 2, the district will use the MSBA template to issue procurement for the OPM, and then will proceed to the MSBA's OPM review panel after selecting their preferred vendor. The OPM will then help the district update the MSBA's template for architectural services, and the district will select 3 representatives to join the MSBA's designer selection panel. The educational plan is the foundation of the design and should drive decisions about renovation or construction of the building. The architectural firms that apply for your project will provide support and may do that internally, but may also hire an educational planner as a subconsultant. But the educational plan overall is the district's and is something that our board members focus on when reviewing projects, and they will ask questions specifically about it during committee meetings. Another recommendation is to engage facilities staff in the planning process and dig into the annual operating budgets, projections, and lifestyle costs of the proposed solution so that there are no surprises when you're getting ready to occupy the building. Planning for ongoing professional development of existing staff, as well as training new facility staff as they join, is critical in these high-performing buildings. A new building, even if it is for the same number of students, may be larger, more complex, and require more maintenance staff than the current building. I'm going to turn it over to Matt for the next section.
So, well, first of all, I'd like to say once again, thank you to MASC for advocating when we did propose these changes with the legislature. We work closely with the legislature, work closely with our constituency groups like MASC in looking at our program and looking at ways that we might be able to improve it or ways that we can help districts out that are definitely in need. So in 2023, the authority statute was amended, and for the second time, our annual cap was increased from around 800 million to 1.2 billion. It was a big increase, and we get 1 penny off the sales tax that funds that 1.2 billion. So with that, our sales tax can grow. With the amended language in the FY24 budget, we're also able to increase that growth from 4 to 6.5%. Also, the statute allowed the authority to take our ARP projects out of the calculation for the cap. So that was important as well because it freed up more projects for our core, more funding for our core projects. Okay.
All right.
Recent changes to the funding policy also include participation in ADA accessibility upgrades and fire protection upgrades required by code for the ARP program. What we found a lot when we were doing roofs, windows on door projects, and at the time boilers or now heat pumps, was that the assessed value of the schools was triggering ADA compliance and code issues. And so we have incorporated that now. That policy has been tweaked and changed that we will participate in that going forward. Another part of it is for electrical system upgrades required to support the heat pump solution because the heat pump does have some electrical requirements and the grid has to be able to sustain those. Next slide. Our funding limits, how we fund projects. So we've had significant increases from when I first started. We were at $275 a square foot. We are now at $605 a square foot, plus eligible demolition and abatement. It's up 12% of the building cost funding limit. So we've increased it by 12%. And we continue to look at that on a yearly basis. And some people might be saying that 605 is not going to cover the whole amount for the project. We have never been set up to cover the whole amount. That we always think that the local municipality has to have a stake in the game as well. And some other increases that we did, our FF&E increased to $1,915 per student, and our computer equipment increased to $1,570 per student. We also increased funding limits for our OPM and designer basic services. So we're trying to look at ways that we can help districts out and offset some of the costs that come with these projects. Next. And Jennifer, that's the update for those, but I know we're throwing a lot at you and we're in a short amount of time. So we just want to make sure that we give enough time at the end for questions because I'm sure there'll be plenty of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. The MSBA's Green Schools programs provides incentives to increase the energy efficiency and sustainability for new construction and major renovation addition projects by meeting the new opt-in specialized energy code for 3 incentive points and for exceeding the MSBA's minimum standards for indoor air quality for 1 incentive point. At the April 29th board meeting earlier this week, staff presented updates to the policies based on the U.S. Green Building Council, which is the organization that provides LEED certification. And there is a roundtable webinar on our Green School program on May 21st at 10 a.m. that you can join. There are a number of all-electric, geothermal, and net zero schools either completed or in progress across the Commonwealth. I was surprised when I first saw this slide at the number of all-electric buildings. And our model school program is another thing that we'd like to highlight for districts thinking about submitting an SOI. The Holyoke Peck Middle School is an example of a recent model school program success. Our websites list the schools available as well as those being built using the models, and we have a procurement outstanding that will add additional designs to the models offered. Touring a recently built school with your project team is a really good way to think about how you will implement your educational plan and explore how spaces can be used in multiple ways in order to keep the school right-sized and flexible for future needs. And it's important to think about that at the earliest design phases. On April 16th, we had a Story of a Building event at the Doherty Memorial High School in Worcester. Attendees heard from district representatives, the OPM designer and contractor, and were able to tour the building. This slide shows some of the resources provided, and you can find more information on the Our Programs and Initiatives section of our website. So thank you for joining today. We're available. Our contact information is on this slide, and we have provided MASC with this slide deck. But we're also available to take questions right now.
Jennifer, just so you know, I did answer a few questions there while we were going, so.
Oh, great.
I'm actually going to suggest we maybe read the questions because I'm not sure that people necessarily can see the answers.
Oh, okay.
But just and also those who are those who visit this later when after it's recorded probably won't be able to. So there was a link provided to be able to find the district rating. It is right off of the Mass School Building Authority's website. And you can find your own school there again, unless it's a school that's already in the pipeline. And by the way, correct me if anything I say here is wrong. And then there was an answer to a question about if the school committee should wait until entering the feasibility study phase to vote on grade configuration for the project, or if it's all right if they vote on the ultimate grade configuration prior to that phase. And the response was it's important to have those discussions at the local level prior to applying and then noting it in the SOI. The feasibility study is going to make a district look at 3 options, bringing the school up to code, an addition renovation option, and a new option. At a minimum, those 3 options need to be looked at. And during that phase, the grade configuration conversation will come up again. And now I will turn myself back off and let you all take your questions.
I think the big thing for us is we take anything and everything seriously with these projects because we know the time and effort and collaboration and partnership that goes into making these schools come to fruition. So happy to answer any of the questions that people have. Jennifer, do you want to take a shot?
Yeah, it took me a minute to find where the question and answers were showing up. I had to click under more to get to see them. So there's a question about pre-K. A standalone pre-K building does not qualify as a project currently under our SOI process, but there can be instances where pre-K is included in another school. If you have specific questions, I would encourage you to go to the website and click on the contact us. If you're already in the pipeline and you have these types of questions, you are assigned a project coordinator who can find the right person to ask questions and do follow up to make sure the right person is getting to those.
I can read them to you, Jennifer, and you can answer them. How about that?
Okay.
When submitting an SOI, do you prefer doing a renovation versus a new build? Does one provide more funding?
There are incentive points, I believe, still for a renovation project. So you can have your project team do an analysis. As mentioned earlier, you will be required during the feasibility study to look at both a renovation and addition. In the SOI, you can indicate what you think might end up being the result. You think perhaps that your current building is too small. It was built 100 years ago. It hasn't had many renovations. It doesn't have, modern mechanical systems. You may think new construction is the right solution. You can indicate that in the SOI, but all districts are required to look at both renovation and addition. Sometimes site availability is also something that can affect the decision about new construction versus renovation. But even though there's incentive points for renovation, I can't say specifically that one gets more funding overall than another. Because it really, each project is different, even though they're looking at the same, end result of educating a certain number of students. The renovation project versus the new construction might have different costs and therefore different eligible reimbursable costs.
And just to follow up and add to Jennifer's answer there, just how we fund projects, we're funding 31 to 80% of eligible cost, and those are based on some socioeconomic factors that are in our statute, just so people know that. The next question, are there any best practices on how often a school building committee should update their school committee and city council town boards on project status while in the MSBA pipeline? I'm happy to take that one if you want.
Yeah.
So I think having a local consensus and while there be disagreements, there are no really best practices, but it's based on how your local community is going to set up your school building committee, who they're going to have participating on it. We have guidelines and recommendations on our school building committee and what the makeup should be, but each individual district might want to add other people onto the school building committee. So the communications, the collaboration, the partnership, while with the MSBA, has to be also between the school committee, the local officials, the school committee, superintendent, and any local town officials. So we wouldn't have a best practice. We would just ask that everyone try to get along and try to make the best decisions possible to make sure that projects are build a consensus on a local level. All right, next question, Jennifer. What is FF&E?
Oh, did Anthony want to also respond? I saw a notification in the Q&A.
Oh, I'm just cycling through, guys.
Oh, okay. Got it. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So desks, tables for the cafeteria, equipment for the mechanical room, server rooms, that sort of thing.
Apologies, sometimes we get crazed with our acronyms. So the follow-up to that is curious about the 1,570 per student for computer equipment. That has to do with the buildings. I think clarify the question, that has to do with school projects that we're working with the community on. Yes, just particular to that project.
Yeah, and it's kind of a subset of equipment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Next question, ARP. Will the MSBA consider projects to improve energy efficiency or air quality in the future, in addition to roofs, doors, windows, and heat pumps? RDW and HP, or is this already included in the scope of RDS and HP? So we're always looking at, if people come to us for energy efficiency or air quality, it would be included in the ARP program. So as long as it falls under one of the categories that we're currently working with.
Do you want me to bring this slide back up? There's a question about the heat pump requirements.
Yeah, what slide was it, Jen?
It is. Let's see.
Slide 8, maybe?
Yes.
So the requirements, the heat pump category has unique requirements such as windows less than 30 years old, the need to also replace, well, if you have windows less than 30 years old, you can't have windows less than 30 years old. The need to have a roof that is can't be a roof that's more than 15 years old, and a building steam heating system would be ineligible. So those are the three categories, three requirements that I mentioned here. So just to reiterate, The heat pump category has unique requirements such as windows less than 30 years old, the need to also replace the roof if it's more than 15 years old, and buildings with steam heating systems are ineligible.
They're currently like our current policy it's ineligible. And we had a number of applications, and we were able to invite most of the people who applied. If we had said STEAM were eligible, then the number of applications might have been larger and exceeded our budget and capacity. So like all our policies, like our funding policies, site eligibility policies, we do review them periodically. So that may change in the future if you have a heating system that is steam.
Yeah. So
but
the big
currently,
part, sorry. So
no,
the
go
big part for the heat pump is making sure the envelope of the building is secure and sealed. So,
ahead.
uh, next question. If your project involves just an addition to existing space, is it possible to include updates to other portions of the building?
I think the answer is yes. Renovation additions are a permitted project type for the core program. So you can, build an entire new academic wing and renovate your gymnasium.
Next question is ARP. Additional questions about scope, replacing old boilers or HVAC, even if the heat pump solution may not be feasible.
So replacement of natural gas or oil boilers was previously part of the ARP program, and they're no longer eligible. The ARP program will only be supporting heat pump projects, but the heat pump project could be a hybrid. So the designer will work with you to look at what is the best way to design a heat pump for your particular building and site. It could be a combination of geothermal and a boiler that supports the coldest days of the year. But just the replacement of an in-kind fossil fuel boiler is not going to be eligible under the current program.
Next question. Are there any requirements to decommission older system like boilers to take part in the heat pump ARP program?
I think the answer to that is you're not likely to retain your current boiler, even in a hybrid project. But I think that's probably a little bit more detailed question than we're able to get into here, unless you have more thoughts on that, Matt.
No, I just think if I'm reading correctly, are there any requirements? Yeah, I mean, you would be taking the old system offline in order to incorporate the new heat pump program. So I think that's what the genesis of the question is, but I'm not positive. So, but yeah, you would have to decommission the older system. We are a 6-town regional district with all towns having select board town meeting governance. There may be one or two with a town manager. How does a chief executive, for whatever that terminology is, work in that kind of situation?
I think that you would look at your own bylaws to determine what's
Charter.
appropriate. Yeah, the town charter. There may be a town administrator or the chair of the Board of Selectmen, but we would work with you to make sure that you get the right person to sign. And I think you could refer to your town council to get, feedback on how your charter works.
Next comment was having heating redundancy seems wise. Decommissioning functioning older systems seems short-sighted.
I understand where they're coming from on this one. And having a backup system may be important. The state's goals for sustainability are really trying to move toward all electric and decommissioning fossil fuel boilers. So it's a balance of what your needs are for your building to determine when you would want to move forward with a replacement project. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Matt?
I think you covered it, Jen. I think you covered that. So Tracy, I think we covered every question. If you want to kick it back to you.
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you. So we're under time here, so you all have been very, very efficient. We appreciate that. As we've been noting, the slides are going to be available and sent to you, and this recording is also going to be sent to you, and it will also live on our website along with the slides. But I also do want to just put a note in, not only in my current capacity, but as a former school committee member who was lucky enough to have several MSBA projects go through, including you got to see Doherty there. That's a Worcester building. I want to attest to the collaboration and the cooperation that MSBA shows to school districts in terms of answering your questions. So if you are walking away from here today and have particular questions, make sure that you get in touch with them. And with that, I'll leave everybody to enjoy their beautiful afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Take care.